I've always believed that desperation makes you see opportunities where others only see danger. At least, that's what I told myself the day I clicked on that glowing ad in the station's job board. An ad so plain, so unassuming, it almost felt like a joke. Help wanted. Agricultural assistance needed. Remote colony. Room, board, and generous compensation provided. That was it. No details about crops, tools, or hours. Just a promise of easy work and a decent reward. For someone like me, drifting between stations, scraping together credits for meals and berth fees, it might as well have been a lifeline tossed into the void. I stared at the screen for a long time, chewing on the inside of my cheek, thinking about my dwindling balance. I had just enough left for another 2 nights in the dorm bunks, 1 maybe 2 hot meals, and then nothing. Nothing but the station guards catching me trying to sleep in the maintenance halls again, and tossing me out the airlock in disgrace. So when the choice stood between slow starvation on a crowded station and what sounded like hauling water buckets for alien farmers, I didn't hesitate. I tapped the ad. The reply came almost instantly, which should have been my first red flag. Accepted. Shuttle leaves docking bay 12 at 0600. Be there. No interviews, no paperwork. Just a time, a place. And me? I grinned like a fool. The shuttle was older than most, patched together with mismatched hull plates, its engines coughing vapor like a dying beast. The pilot didn't bother with pleasantries. He just jerked his thumb toward the back where a few other passengers were already seated. I counted 3, all human like me. Each one avoided eye contact, staring at their hands, their boots, the floor. I should have taken that as my second red flag. We lifted off with a lurch that made my stomach twist. The windows were scuffed, but I caught glimpses of stars as we broke free of the station's orbit, then the shimmering curve of the planet below. It wasn't like the glossy travel vids, no grand oceans or glittering cities. From up here it looked quiet, too quiet. Swathes of deep green forests, wide plains of gold, little clusters of what might have been settlements, though they didn't glow with neon or steel. Instead, they blended with the earth, like old villages tucked away from time. Not much out here, one of the men muttered under his breath, and the woman beside him just hugged her knees tighter. I said nothing. Part of me didn't want to break the silence, afraid I might discover something I wasn't ready to hear. The descent rattled my bones. By the time the shuttle thudded onto dirt, not ferrocrete, my hands were clenched so tight my knuckles ached. The hatch opened to air that smelled different, thick, damp, alive. It hit me like walking into a greenhouse, sweet and musky with hints of soil and blooming things I didn't recognize. And then I saw them, the villagers. At first glance, they weren't terrifying. No claws, no dripping mandibles, no rows of teeth like the nightmares whispered in spacers' bars. They were tall, taller than any human by at least a head, and their skin shimmered faintly, like scales hidden beneath flesh. Their eyes, wide and luminescent, carried a strange warmth that unsettled me more than coldness would have. They smiled. They waved. They welcomed us like honored guests. New helpers. One of them said in a voice that resonated deeper than any human's, almost like music, "You are most welcome here." I exhaled slowly, trying to let my shoulders drop. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. The village itself was quaint. That was the word that kept circling in my head as we walked along the packed earth path. Homes shaped from living wood bent into frames, roofs draped in thick leaves, lanterns glowing softly though it was broad daylight. Children darted around, curious, peeking at us from behind fences and trees. It didn't feel like an alien world. It felt like some forgotten countryside back on Earth, only stranger, greener, with the air buzzing faintly with energy. We were shown to a communal hall where food had already been laid out. Bowls of fruits, thick breads, steaming soups with herbs that stung my nose but tasted surprisingly good. Hunger overrode caution, and soon I was eating like I hadn't in weeks. The others too, except for the woman, who only picked at her bowl, her eyes scanning the walls, the ceiling, as if searching for hidden traps. Again, I should have paid attention. But I didn't. That first night, they gave me a bed in a small cottage near the fields. Wooden walls, soft bedding stuffed with something like feathers, a window that opened to the sound of insects humming in the dark. It was the most comfortable sleep I'd had in months. And yet, I dreamed of eyes, dozens of them, glowing faintly in the dark, watching me as I lay still. I dreamed of voices whispering words I didn't understand, layered and musical, promising things I couldn't quite grasp. When I woke, sweat clung to my skin though the air was cool. I shook it off, told myself it was just nerves, the strangeness of the place. After all, I'd signed up for work. Real work. I'd earn my keep, maybe stack up some credits and move on before too long. That was the plan. Simple, clean. But as I stepped outside, stretching in the morning light, I caught sight of the villagers gathered near the edge of the fields. They stood in a wide circle, their hands clasped, their voices rising in that same layered, musical tone I'd heard in my dream. I froze, watching. The others, the man from the shuttle, the woman too, they stood there as well, only not as outsiders. They were within the circle, eyes closed, faces serene, as if they belonged. Something inside me went cold. One of the villagers noticed me and smiled, beckoning. "Come, Aiden," he said, his voice warm, inviting. "The work begins." I should have felt relief. Finally, work. Finally, I could repay my keep. But instead, unease coiled in my stomach like a living thing. Still, what choice did I have? I stepped forward. And that was the beginning, the moment I walked into the circle of their strange ritual. Believing I was there to till soil, plant seeds, harvest crops. Believing I was simply a farmhand. Believing I was safe. But the truth was waiting. And I had no idea that my so-called job had nothing to do with fields, or grain, or livestock. No, what they wanted from me was something far more unsettling. Something I wasn't ready to face. When the circle broke apart, I thought maybe we'd be handed tools. A plow, a hoe, a bucket. Something that would prove this was indeed a farm. Instead, the villagers simply nodded to one another, dispersing in quiet pairs, their voices fading into murmurs that clung to the air long after. One of them, taller than the rest, approached me. His features weren't easy to read. Smooth skin that shimmered green and gold in the sunlight, a ridge of bone above his brow, eyes like molten amber. But his smile seemed genuine, almost kind. "You are far from home," he said. Not a question, but a statement, as though he already knew my story before I opened my mouth. "Yeah," I admitted, trying to force a chuckle. "Guess you could say that." He tilted his head slightly, studying me with those glowing eyes. "Here you will not be hungry. You will not be cold. You will be part of the village. That is our way." I nodded, though unease tugged at me. His tone was reassuring, but there was a weight behind his words, like he wasn't offering. It was a certainty. Before I could dwell on it, he motioned for me to follow. The fields stretched wide beyond the cottages, rolling with tall grasses and patches of something like vines. I squinted at the rows, expecting to see fruit or vegetables. Instead, the vines bore long pods that pulsed faintly, as though alive, as though breathing. I slowed, frowning. "Are those crops?" "They are life," the tall villager replied cryptically. The others didn't question it. The woman from the shuttle had joined us, her face pale, but she stayed silent. One of the men bent down to touch the vines, his hand lingering over the pod's surface like it was precious. I swallowed hard. Life, right? Got it. But the truth was, I didn't get it. Not at all. Back in the village, I tried to distract myself by noticing the details. The sound of wind chimes crafted from bone and shell, the murals etched into wooden walls depicting scenes I didn't understand. Some looked like harvest celebrations. Others looked like unions. Figures intertwined, surrounded by halos of light, watched over by villagers with outstretched hands. My stomach twisted. I told myself it was nothing. Just culture, just art. Every settlement had its symbols. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that all of it, the songs, the vines, the murals, was connected. And I was missing the piece that made sense of it. They gave me tasks simple at first. Carrying water from the stream, chopping kindling, repairing nets they used for fishing. Work I could understand. Work that reminded me of the odd jobs I'd picked up back on Earth when I had nothing else. The villagers praised me, always smiling, always thanking me in their strange melodic voices. Their warmth was almost overwhelming, like I was some long-lost friend returned. At night, they gathered in the communal hall. Fires crackled, shadows danced on the walls, and the air filled with that layered singing again, voices weaving together in harmonies that rattled my chest. I sat in the corner, pretending to enjoy it, though the sound made the hairs on my arms rise. It wasn't just music, it was ritual, and every time I felt eyes on me, watching, measuring. Days blurred together. Work, food, sleep, ritual. On the surface, life here was easy. Easier than station living, that was certain. No fights for scraps. No shoving through crowded markets. No counting every coin before you ate. But the undercurrent never went away. The villagers touched often. Hands on shoulders, fingers brushing arms. Casual contact that felt too intimate by human standards. They lingered when they spoke, standing closer than I was used to. Gazes lingering like they were searching for something in my expression. And then there were the children. They were everywhere, laughing, running, playing in the fields. But when they looked at me, their laughter would stop. Their wide, glowing eyes would fix on me, studying, unblinking. And then, as if on cue, they'd scatter again, giggling as though I'd passed some unspoken test. I started sleeping poorly. The dreams came back. Eyes in the dark, voices whispering. Sometimes I woke to the faint sound of footsteps outside my cottage, fading as soon as I sat up. I told myself I was imagining it, that the villagers were harmless, just eccentric, that the job was what it seemed. But deep down I already knew. Something was off. One evening, after a long day hauling wood, I sat near the stream to wash my hands. The water was cool, clear, reflecting the twin moons above. That's when the woman from the shuttle came to me. "You feel it too, don't you?" she whispered, crouching beside me. Her eyes darted to the trees as though afraid someone might overhear. I hesitated. "Feel what?" Her lips trembled. "This isn't farming. It's not what they told us." I stared at her, my chest tightening. "What do you mean?" She shook her head quickly, too quickly, then stood. "Forget I said anything." And before I could stop her, she hurried back toward the cottages, vanishing into the lantern glow. My reflection rippled in the stream. My own eyes looked back at me, wide and uncertain. For the first time since I arrived, I wondered if I'd made a mistake too big to escape. Later that night, the tall villager visited my cottage. He didn't knock, just stepped inside as though the space was his. His presence filled the room, his golden eyes catching the firelight. "You are settling well," he said, not asking. I forced a nod. "Yeah, work's work. Food's good." He smiled faintly. "It pleases us. You will be ready soon." The words hit me like a stone in the gut. "Ready? Ready for what?" I opened my mouth to ask, but his gaze pinned me in place, heavy and unyielding. My voice caught in my throat, and then, as quickly as he came, he turned and left. The door closed softly behind him, leaving me alone with the silence. I sat there for a long time, staring at the door, the unease inside me growing until it was all I could feel. I knew then that whatever this village wanted from me, it wasn't farm labor. It was something else, something I wasn't ready to understand. It happened on the 7th day. I'd settled into a rhythm by then. Chores during the daylight, food in the communal hall, and uneasy sleep at night. I told myself the villagers' rituals were just culture, their closeness just custom. I told myself everything was fine. But deep down, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And it did. The morning began like any other. Mist hung low over the fields, curling around the pods that swelled on the vines. I was carrying buckets of water when I noticed something strange. One of the pods had split open. At first, I thought it was just rotting. But when I leaned closer, my breath caught. Inside wasn't fruit or seeds or anything I'd seen on a farm. It was soft, flesh-like. A pulsing membrane curled inward, moist and glistening, with veins running through it like something alive. It moved, just barely, but enough that I stumbled back, the bucket slipping from my hands and spilling across the soil. My stomach turned. Before I could process it, a villager appeared. Not the tall one, but another, her skin shimmering silver blue. She crouched beside the pod, running her hand gently across its surface. Her expression was serene, almost reverent. "Do not fear," she said softly, glancing at me. "It is natural." "Natural," I echoed, my voice cracking. That's not a plant." Her eyes lingered on me, unblinking. "It is life. Life that we nurture. Life that you will help us continue." The way she said it, calm, certain, made the world tilt beneath me. I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but my tongue felt thick. She closed the pod with a practiced touch, the membrane sealing as though it had never opened. Then she stood and walked away, leaving me shaking in the mist. I didn't eat much that day. The food tasted wrong in my mouth, my stomach too knotted to hold it down. In the evening, I cornered the woman from the shuttle. She looked worse than I did. Eyes sunken, skin pale, lips pressed tight as though she hadn't spoken in days. "You know, don't you?" I whispered when no one was near. "The pods, what they're growing." Her gaze darted to the villagers singing in the hall. She shook her head quickly. "Don't talk here." So we slipped out into the night, past the lanterns, into the trees where shadows swallowed us. There, her voice broke like glass. "They're not crops. They're wombs." The words hit me like a blade. "What?" "They call it farming, but it's not plants. It's reproduction. Their species, it's dying. They need us." She swallowed hard, her eyes wide and wild. "We're not workers, Aiden. We're breeders." The world spun around me. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. "No," I whispered. "That can't." "It's true," she hissed. "Haven't you noticed? The way they watch us, the way they touch. They've been preparing us since we arrived." My mind rebelled, but the signs rushed in all at once. The murals of unions, the children staring, the pods pulsing in the fields. The villagers' smiles. Their words. "You will be ready soon." Oh God, they hadn't lied when they said the work was easy. They just hadn't told us what it really was. That night I didn't sleep. Every sound outside my cottage made me jolt upright. I swore I heard whispers through the walls, soft voices speaking words I couldn't understand. My own reflection in the window seemed foreign, as though I'd already changed, as though they'd already done something to me without my knowing. At dawn, the tall villager returned. He didn't bother with pleasantries. He simply stepped inside, his eyes glowing gold in the dim light. "It is time," he said. I backed away instinctively, my hands raised. "Time for what?" He tilted his head, as though surprised I even asked. "For you to fulfill your purpose. To give life." My pulse thundered in my ears. "I came here to work, to farm. That's what the ad said." He smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. "And what is farming human if not nurturing life?" You were not deceived. Only unprepared. I shook my head, panic clawing at me. No, I didn't agree to this." He stepped closer, his presence suffocating, his voice like a song that seeped into my bones. "It is not about agreement. It is about survival. Our kind cannot endure without you. You have been chosen. That is honor." Honor. The word twisted like a knife. I wanted to scream, to run, to fight, but my legs felt heavy, my voice stuck in my throat. It was as though the very air pressed against me, urging me to yield. And in that moment, I realized the truth in its full horror. This wasn't a job. It was a conscription. I wasn't here to work the land. I was here to be part of their breeding stock. And the worst part? There was no way out. The next days blurred into a nightmare. The villagers grew more watchful, more insistent. They spoke less of chores, more of destiny. I was invited, or commanded really, to join ceremonies in the hall where their voices wrapped around me like chains. They touched me more often now. A hand on my arm that lingered too long. A brush of fingers against my cheek. Always smiling, always warm. But beneath it, a pressure, an expectation. The pods in the field swelled larger, some splitting open to reveal new shapes within, shapes I didn't dare look at too closely. The woman from the shuttle avoided me now. Maybe she'd already given in. Maybe she couldn't bear to fight anymore. I didn't know. I only knew that I was next. And the question that haunted me wasn't if I could escape, but whether I even wanted to anymore. Because with every song, every touch, every glowing stare, part of me felt weaker. Part of me felt drawn, like something inside me was shifting, like maybe I was already theirs. The hardest part wasn't the revelation itself. It was the waiting. Every day after that, I lived with the weight of inevitability pressing down on me. The villagers never said it outright, not in so many words, but the expectation hung in the air like humidity, thick and inescapable. Every glance, every smile, every casual brush of their hands reminded me, "You're here to give us life." And I didn't know how much longer I could fight it. The woman from the shuttle was gone. One morning, I woke to find her cottage empty, her bedding neatly folded, her belongings vanished. The villagers didn't mention her, and when I asked, they only smiled with that infuriating calm. "She has found her place," one said softly. The words chilled me more than if they'd said she was dead, because it meant she had accepted it, or maybe she'd been forced to accept. And now I was alone. I tried to convince myself I could escape. At night, I studied the paths out of the village, memorizing the curve of the stream, the rise of the hills. I told myself that if I left while they slept, I could vanish into the wilderness, find my way back to the shuttle port, bribe my way onto a freighter. But then I thought about the pods, the way they pulsed as if alive, the way the villagers touched them, nurtured them. I thought about the rituals, the songs that wrapped around my head until I couldn't think straight. And I realized I wasn't even sure if my thoughts were still my own. What if I ran, and found myself turning back anyway? What if they'd already woven something into me with their voices, their touch, their endless eyes? The fear of that was worse than the fear of staying. One night, I sat alone in my cottage, staring at the ceiling beams, when the tall villager came again. He didn't knock. He never did. He simply entered, filling the room with his presence. "You struggle," he said gently. Not an accusation, not even disappointment. Just certainty. I laughed bitterly, though it came out more like a choke. "Of course I struggle. You want me to—" I broke off, unable to say the word. He tilted his head, waiting. "You want me to make babies?" I spat, finally forcing it out. He didn't flinch. "To give life. Yes. Is that not what all beings are made for? To continue themselves." "That's not the same," I snapped. My hands trembled in my lap. "You tricked me. You didn't tell me what this was." "You would not have come otherwise," he said simply. I froze, because he was right. If the ad had said wanted humans to save dying species through forced reproduction, I would have laughed and scrolled past. But now I was here, and they knew it. "I can't," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "It's wrong." I didn't agree. He crouched in front of me, his eyes glowing gold in the dim firelight. His voice dropped to a low, soothing hum. "Consent is not a barrier. You are chosen. You are needed. What greater honor than to preserve an entire people?" "Honor?" I repeated, the word sour on my tongue. "Yes." His hand rested lightly on my knee, his touch burning through the fabric of my trousers. "Your name will be sung for generations. Your children will carry you in their blood. You will be eternal here." Children. The word made my stomach twist. I thought of the pods, the pulsing membranes. Was that what they called children? Were those things already part human, part them? I shoved his hand away, stumbling to my feet. "No, I won't. I'm not yours." For the first time, his expression flickered. Not anger, but something deeper, something like pity. "You will learn," he said quietly. "It is only fear that binds you. Once you accept, you will see." And then he was gone, leaving me trembling in the silence, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. That night I barely slept. My thoughts spun in endless circles. If I refused, what would they do? Lock me in? Force me? Would they drug me, use me without consent, leave me broken and hollow? If I accepted, what would that make me? A traitor to myself? A willing prisoner? Or something else? Because beneath the fear, another thought lingered. A poisonous, dangerous thought I couldn't shake. What if they're right? What if this really was survival, not just for me, but for them? What if my refusal doomed an entire people? Wasn't that worse? But then I remembered the woman. The way her voice cracked when she whispered the truth. The way she disappeared. If she had accepted, it wasn't by choice. And I couldn't let that be my fate. The next day, I avoided the villagers as best I could. I threw myself into meaningless tasks. Stacking wood, hauling water. Anything that kept my hands busy and my mind distracted. But their eyes followed me everywhere. Always warm, always smiling, but with that same undercurrent of expectation. By sunset, I couldn't take it anymore. I slipped into the forest. The air was cooler beneath the trees, the ground soft with moss. I followed the stream, heart racing, telling myself I was leaving, that I could do this, that I wasn't trapped. But after what felt like hours, I emerged onto a ridge and saw the village below, lanterns glowing softly in the dusk. I hadn't gone far at all. It was as though the forest had turned me in circles, guiding me back. I sank to my knees, despair crashing over me. I was trapped, not by walls, not by guards, but by something deeper. By them. That night, when I returned to my cottage, the tall villager was waiting. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said everything. The time for waiting was almost over, and I knew I had only two choices left. Give in, or fight, and either way, it would change me forever. They didn't wait long. The very next evening, the summons came. I was in my cottage, staring blankly at the wooden beams overhead, when the door creaked open. Two villagers entered, both tall, both glowing faintly in the firelight. Their smiles were kind, but their eyes were unyielding. "It is time," one said. I didn't answer. My throat was dry, my palms slick with sweat. They didn't wait for permission. They simply beckoned, as though I was a child being led to a lesson I'd already agreed to. And though every instinct screamed at me to run, I followed. Because deep down, I knew there was no running. Not anymore. They led me to the hall. I'd seen it before, filled with villagers singing, shadows dancing across the walls. But now it was different. The air was thick with incense, sweet and cloying, making my head swim. The fire burned brighter, casting golden light that shimmered on their strange, scaled skin. The entire village was there, rows of them, standing silently, their luminous eyes fixed on me. At the center stood the tall villager, the one who had spoken to me so many times, who had promised honor, destiny, eternity. He raised his hands, and the crowd parted. "Aiden," he said, his voice resonant, echoing through the chamber. "You are ready." My knees nearly buckled. Ready. That word again. I forced my voice past the lump in my throat. "I didn't agree to this." His smile didn't falter. "Agreement is irrelevant. You are chosen. Your presence here is consent enough. The cycle must continue." The crowd hummed, their voices rising in layered harmony. The sound seeped into my bones, vibrating through my chest. My vision swam. "No," I whispered. My hands trembled. "I won't." The tall villager stepped closer, his gaze burning into mine. "You will, because there is no other path." Behind him, the pods loomed. I hadn't noticed them at first, lined against the far wall, glowing faintly, pulsing with that terrible, fleshy rhythm. Some were sealed, others open to reveal shapes curled within. Shapes not quite human, not quite alien. My stomach lurched. Those weren't crops. They were offspring. Hybrids. Evidence of what happened to those before me. I staggered back. No, I can't." "You must," he said, his voice sharp now, cutting through the air. "Without you, we wither. Without you, we die. Then die." The words tore from me before I could stop them, raw and desperate. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The singing faltered. For the first time, their perfect calm cracked. The tall villager's expression hardened. Do you not understand? This is not a request. It is survival. And you are part of it, whether you wish it or not. He reached for me, and something inside me snapped. I shoved him back with all the strength I had. He stumbled not far, but enough to break the illusion of inevitability. The crowd hissed, a sound like wind through jagged stone. I bolted. The doors were behind me, heavy wood-bound with iron. I crashed through them, the night air slamming into my lungs. My legs pumped. My heart thundered. My vision blurred with panic. I didn't care where I went. I just had to get away. But the villagers followed. I could hear them. Feet pounding the earth, voices rising in that terrible harmony. The sound twisted around me, pulling at my mind, slowing my steps. Stop, Aiden. The tall one's voice boomed, echoing through the night. Do not fight what you are meant to be. I stumbled, nearly fell. My head spun. The song clawed at my thoughts, dragging me down. But something deeper pushed me forward, the raw, burning will to remain myself. I screamed into the night. A sound ripped from my very soul and forced my legs to keep moving. I crashed through the forest, branches tearing at my skin. The stream glittered faintly in the moonlight ahead, the same one I'd tried to follow before. This time, I didn't care if it circled me back. I just needed distance. But when I reached the ridge, my heart sank. Below, the village lights flickered as though mocking me. I hadn't escaped at all. The forest was theirs. The land was theirs. I was running in circles because they wanted me to. No, I gasped, my chest heaving. No, no, no. A shadow fell across me. The tall villager stepped from the trees, his eyes glowing gold, his expression unreadable. You see now, he said softly. There is no leaving. You belong here. I backed away until my heels hit the ridge's edge. One more step, and I'd tumble into the rocks below. Maybe that was better. Maybe death was better than what they wanted. Don't, he said, raising a hand. Do not throw yourself away. You are precious. Your life has meaning here. I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. My life is mine, not yours. The crowd emerged from the trees, surrounding me in a wide circle, their eyes glowing in the moonlight. Their voices rose again, soft at first, then swelling until the air vibrated. I clapped my hands over my ears, but it was no use. The song was inside me, worming into my mind, my chest, my very bones. I dropped to my knees, shaking, every muscle fighting to hold on. And in that moment, I realized the truth. This wasn't just about survival for them. It was about control. If I gave in, I'd never be Aiden again. I'd be theirs, forever. And I couldn't let that happen. With the last shred of strength I had, I hurled myself backward off the ridge. The villagers screamed. Sharp, discordant. The first time I'd ever heard them break harmony. Wind roared past my ears. The rocks rushed up to meet me. And as the world tilted and spun, one thought burned in my mind. Better to fall as myself than live as their prisoner. I stood there, my chest rising and falling like I had just run across the whole damn galaxy. My hands shook, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was the weight of what I had just chosen. The entire village, every alien pair of eyes, was on me. Some wide with shock, some burning with anger, others unreadable, as if they had been expecting this moment all along. It was supposed to be simple. A job, a farm, a roof over my head. Instead, I'd been pulled into something I could barely wrap my mind around. Expectations I never agreed to. Traditions that didn't belong to me. And now, after rejecting the role they had set for me, I had to live with what came next. Silence stretched across the square where the confrontation had ended. The elder staff was still planted in the ground, humming faintly with its strange energy. I realized I was gripping my own fists so hard my nails cut into my palms. One of the villagers, a tall woman with skin that shimmered faintly in the torchlight, stepped forward. Her expression wasn't anger. It was sadness. She tilted her head, almost like she pitied me. "You don't understand," she said in a voice that carried through the hushed crowd. "You think we trapped you, but we chose you because we believed you could save us." Save them. The words clawed at my chest. How many times had they repeated that since I arrived? At first, I thought it was just manipulation, a guilt trip designed to make me comply. But now, looking into their faces, I saw desperation. These people weren't villains in their own eyes. They were survivors. Still, that didn't make my decision any easier. "I didn't come here to save anyone," I said, my voice rough, almost cracking. "I came here because I needed work, because I was hungry, because I thought this would be a fresh start. But I never agreed to this." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some angry, some fearful. The elder raised his staff and the noise died instantly. He studied me, his alien eyes glowing faintly as though seeing deeper into me than I was comfortable with. "Then what will you do, human?" he asked. "Leave us to wither? Watch from the safety of the stars as our kind fades into dust?" It was a question meant to tear me apart. And it did. Because for the first time I realized the choice wasn't just about me. It was about them too. I thought about the nights I had spent in their village. The meals they shared with me even when they had little. The way their children had laughed at my clumsy attempts to mimic their games. The kindness, however strange, that they had offered me. But I also thought about the pressure. The unspoken demand that had hung over me from the moment I arrived. The way they had smiled, yes, but also watched me with expectation. The job ad hadn't been honest. I had been tricked. And now I was standing at the crossroads of their survival and my freedom. The days after the confrontation blurred together. Some villagers avoided me entirely, turning away when I passed. Others whispered behind my back, words I couldn't understand but tones sharp enough to cut. And some still treated me like before, like nothing had changed. I slept in the small hut they had given me, staring at the ceiling for hours, my thoughts circling endlessly. What if I stayed? What if I gave in? Would it really be so bad? I'd have food, shelter, maybe even companionship. For someone like me, a wanderer with nothing, wasn't that enough? But then I'd remember the choice I didn't get, the lack of consent, the way it all began with a lie, and the thought of surrendering my freedom, even for comfort, felt like chains tightening around my chest. The dilemma ate at me. Every morning when I woke, every night when I lay down, it was there. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, I wandered to the edge of the fields. The soil shimmered faintly under the starlight, as if holding secrets beneath the surface. That's when she found me, Neri. She had been one of the few who didn't treat me like an outsider after the confrontation. Her eyes carried none of the elder's harsh judgment, only a strange, quiet empathy. "You're leaving, aren't you?" she asked softly, stepping beside me. I swallowed hard. "I don't know." "You do," she said, not unkindly. "You've already decided. You just don't want to admit it." I looked at her, at the faint bioluminescence tracing along her cheekbones, at the way her gaze held both strength and sorrow. For a moment, I wondered if leaving would mean leaving her behind too. "Why me?" I asked. "Why not someone else? Why not another from your own people?" Her lips trembled, just slightly. "Because we can't. Our lifeblood is fading. Our children are fewer each season. The stars don't listen to us anymore. But your kind carries something we lost. Something that could bring us back." Her words struck me deeper than I wanted them to. I wanted to be angry, to call it manipulation again. But her voice carried no deceit, only pain. And in that moment, I hated the universe for putting me here, for forcing me to be the answer to a question I never wanted asked. I turned away, my jaw tight. "Maybe I don't want to be your savior." Neri didn't argue. She didn't plead. She just stood beside me in silence, watching the stars. And somehow, that silence weighed heavier than words ever could. That night I dreamed. I dreamed of Earth. Not the Earth I had left, broken by overpopulation and corruption, but the Earth of my childhood. Green fields, blue skies, laughter in the air. I dreamed of my mother's voice calling me in for dinner, of my father's tired but proud smile when I brought home scraps of work. And then the dream shifted. The fields withered. The skies darkened. My parents' faces turned hollow, their eyes glowing like the villagers. They reached out to me, whispering, "Save us, Aiden." I woke drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. The weight of it was unbearable. The following day, the elder summoned me. His hut smelled of incense and smoke, the air heavy with expectation. "You must choose," he said simply. "If you stay, we will honor you, protect you. You will become part of us. If you go, you will carry the burden of our end." I clenched my fists. "You think you can put that on me? Your survival isn't my responsibility." "Perhaps not," the elder replied, his voice calm but cutting. "But fate does not ask for your consent. It only places you where you are needed." I left without answering, because deep down I knew he wasn't entirely wrong. And that was the cruelest truth of all. The footsteps approached slowly, measured, almost hesitant. I didn't need to look up to know it was her. Arya always carried herself that way around me, as though every step risked shattering something fragile between us. She stopped a few feet away, silent, waiting. Finally, I lifted my eyes. Her expression was unreadable, though her hands were clasped tightly in front of her, the golden sheen of her skin catching the pale morning light. "You've been sitting here for hours," she said softly. "Thinking." I nodded. "That's all I seem to do these days." Her gaze flickered toward the forest path. "You're considering leaving." It wasn't a question. "Yes." My voice cracked more than I wanted it to. "And I'm considering staying." Both feel like cages. Different shapes, same trap. Arya lowered herself to the step beside me. The warmth radiating off her body seeped into mine, an unspoken comfort. "We do not wish to cage you, Aiden," she said. "That has never been our way." I laughed bitterly. "It feels like it. I came here to earn a wage. Instead, I'm asked to what? Sacrifice myself for your survival." She didn't flinch at the bite in my tone. Instead, she stared at the horizon with me, her expression distant. "Survival is rarely clean," she murmured. "It asks more of us than we think we can give. Sometimes, it asks too much." Her words lingered in the air, heavy with truth. I turned to her. "Do you believe it's too much? What your people are asking of me?" Arya's lips parted, but for a long moment no sound came. Then finally, yes and no. She met my eyes, and I saw the conflict mirrored there. Too much for a stranger. Perhaps not too much for one who chooses to belong. Belong. The word hit me like a stone to the chest. I had never belonged anywhere. Not back on Earth. Not drifting from one odd job to the next. Not scraping for survival in places that never remembered my name. But here, in this alien village with Arya beside me, hadn't I felt it? Even in the strangest, darkest moments, hadn't I felt something like belonging? I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "And if I don't choose to belong? If I walk away?" Her expression softened, though sadness rippled beneath it. "Then you will be free. No chains, no pursuit. We would not hunt you." She hesitated. "But we would mourn you." That broke something in me. The weight of her words crashed through all the defenses I'd built. This wasn't about obligation. This wasn't about being forced. It was about choice and the price of whichever path I took. I stood abruptly, pacing a few steps into the dirt road. My chest felt tight, my pulse hammering. "Arya, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can give myself away like this. Even if..." I cut off, unable to finish. Even if it meant saving them. Even if it meant saving her. Arya rose quietly and approached me. She didn't touch me. She never touched me without permission. But she stood close enough that I felt her warmth again, steady and grounding. "You are not giving yourself away," she said firmly. "Not if you choose. Not if it is your will. Then it becomes something else. Not sacrifice. Partnership. Partnership." The word felt different. Heavier but cleaner somehow. I looked at her then, really looked at her. at the faint lines of exhaustion on her face, the strength coiled in her posture, the unwavering patience she had shown me from the moment I stumbled into this village. She wasn't asking for a worker. She wasn't asking for a tool. She was asking for me. And for the first time, I realized the decision wasn't about survival or morality. It was about love. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. Somewhere along the way, through the lies, the revelations, the pressure, the fear, I had fallen for her. Not in the naive way of a traveler enchanted by the exotic, but in the quiet, devastating way that sneaks up on you when someone sees you, truly sees you, and still chooses to stay. My voice shook. If I choose this, it has to be on my terms. Not theirs. Not the village's. Mine. Aria's eyes gleamed, and for the first time in days, a small smile touched her lips. Then let it be yours. The tension inside me snapped, replaced by something raw and trembling but resolute. I wasn't agreeing to their bargain. I wasn't surrendering. I was choosing her. That night, the village gathered. The air shimmered with bioluminescent lights strung between the huts, casting everything in hues of violet and gold. It wasn't a ceremony of force, nor one of ownership. It was something quieter, gentler, an acknowledgement. When I stood beside Aria before the others, I wasn't just a worker anymore. I wasn't just a human outsider. I was something else. Partner. The songs rose, and for the first time I didn't feel like an intruder hearing them. I felt woven into them, as if my voice might one day join theirs. And when Aria's hand finally touched mine, warm and certain, I knew I had made my choice. Not for survival, not for obligation, but for love. Weeks later, when I looked out from the same hut at the same horizon, the forest path no longer haunted me. It was still there, an option, a road into the unknown. But I didn't need it anymore. I had found my place. Not in soil tilled or wages earned. Not in contracts or promises. But in the eyes of an alien woman who had taught me that sometimes, the hardest choice isn't whether to leave or stay. It's whether to let yourself belong. And I belonged.